A leader starts with a dream, starts with as something which is not there. He starts with a mission, he starts with a vision, he has his own goals. I was working with Azim Premji years before when it was Western India vegetable products with 14 crores turnover. His first vision was, his role model was Hindustan Lever. He said, I should be as big as Hindustan Lever and as professional as Hindustan Lever. I mean, he used to compare even at that level. Hindustan Lever was some 700 crores, 800 crores company at that point of time. In all the processes, as a leader, he compared himself with that. The second thing he said, I should have a minimum of 35% actual cumulated growth rate. If you really look at any organization, like Tyco, Mr. Dennis, when he started, it was a $2 billion group. And he said, within 5 years, I want to make it a $35 billion group. And in 7 years, it became a 37. And how did he do it? Acquisitions, merger. This type of merger and acquisition strategy took them to all type of routes. So they are now reversing to see a lot of stabilization comes. Will you be able to develop the type of people who are able to align themselves to you? Yes, this.
There are two dimensions I see. One is when you look at the followers, there is an articulation. Somehow as human beings, we look at the emotive content rather than what is the information. And that puts a lot of blinkers on us. And so we fail to see the big picture because of our own emotive or our prejudices. So that is the thing. We don't like some words, but we do not see what is beyond. So as followers, that's the situation. And then also as leaders, sometimes we are blinded by our own vision. We become victims of our own success.
Yeah.
And we are unable to articulate it in a way because we feel, I have sweat. I put a lot of sweat into this whole thing.
Why is it not making sense to them?
I am the one putting all the money here. Why can't it make sense? And as Ravi correctly said, someone starts off very well. And so they expect everyone to take on and share that particular value. And more so I have seen it with the non-governmental organizations, NGOs, because you start off with a lot of activism and there's a tremendous amount of purpose. And it is based on one particular incident. But then later on, when you look at the whole social milieu, you find that there is a lot more you can do. Then there are a few more professionals coming in who articulate it differently. But then there is that disconnect, very rightly. So I think as leaders, do we have a little more compassion and communication? And as followers, I would say, would we just remove our blinkers, barriers, emotional content? Look at facts. And another thing is, as people, we always think that if you do not understand, we think he's against us. It is not so. He just doesn't understand.
Very soon, in any interaction, rational people will understand, okay, this man has got a dream. He's got a vision.
Yes.
He's trying to communicate something.
Yes.
And he's not God, but he's trying to communicate something. When you see people who are anxious to communicate something, which for them is gemstones, they want to communicate those nuggets to you. Don't you see people, excited people, young or old, it doesn't matter, excited, so excited, they want to communicate that they become inarticulate.
Yes.
Haven't you seen that?
That's true.
They will become inarticulate. Now, the point he raises is removing the barriers from both sides. Now the leader is in the podium. The leader is excited. He is one individual. He is communicating the excitement the only way he can communicate. Yes, he must be patient. Yes, he must moderate himself. All that is fine. But it doesn't happen. It's a wish. Why do you have leaders? Why do any one of us want leaders? Why do you admire some leaders? Is it because of rational analysis? At the end of the road, it is, yes, I'll hitch my wagon to this person. He will be my guru or she will be my guru. He is my mentor. She is my mentor. Because I find beyond analysis that instinctive affiliation to him or her and says, I am better off if I hitch my wagon. There is something that is very common between my ideals, my inarticulate ideals, my unstated ideals, and the way he is stating his unstated ideals.
But why is the following is there is, one is the charisma, but the purpose of mission which is there. And another thing, when we are small organizations, it is fine. When we become larger and geographically dispersed, the difficulty is to have the same values. Because
Exactly.
what happens, so someone who is there in the international division or in some product line who says, I want these results quarter to quarter, I don't really care about everything else. So the process takes a beating over the output. So what we are saying is the balance between the process and the output.
Many of the people don't communicate their vision because it will not be understood by people. How do you work with the people, with managers, with your community? How do you keep them totally aligned? How do you create that spark? How do you create the alignment spark in people? The traditional people did it through role. You're the boss, I'm the boss. And people had a respect for age. And then later on, from age and wisdom, it moved on to just purely knowledge and wisdom and your own prowess. And then it is moving on to abilities. Today it is moving on to everybody is same, create a community. So the peer culture. So with times the role modeling need to change. So for a global leader of tomorrow, how are you going to keep your people together? How are you going to energize them? How are you going to keep communicating systematically your values, your goals, and keep the organization aligned to it? These are the big questions, and in answers to questions, many companies have designed many processes. So many of the entrepreneurs who started with this type of a thought process. So if you look at any leader's starting point, any entrepreneur's starting point, there is a very strong value base. And that value he tries to communicate, he struggles. A leader's task and a major role in an organization is to align the organization to the common values and common vision held. In the Indian scenario, where the authority plays a very important role and a role authority confers role wisdom to a particular position, mere role communication and a powerful role communication can do the trick of aligning the organization. In fact, the family businesses were aligned by the progenitor who was able to use his role authority for aligning an organization. Charisma, rhetoric, forceful speeches, excellent perception, wonderful personal perception management can probably align a political party. It may add to the aligning of an organization, but more substantiveness is called for in creating a task logic for vision and value alignment. A professional task-based setup can align its work's values through systematic communication, through a good communication strategy. Organizations of today call for creating an ambience in the community where there is transparency, trust, and equation. So developing the culture is a prerequisite for sharing of the values, and the values are broad-based mainly through sharing and common discussions among peers. The ideal stage is where the community itself, through a sharing process, evolves the values, visions, and goals. You're talking about vision. Vision is basically a dream, an unreality which is yet to be. But for the person who visions, it is almost a reality. He could touch it, yet not touch it. He could feel it, but yet not articulate it. He could sense it, but he is there. He is there, he is already there, he can see it happening, and then he wants the whole organization to move towards that. That's a visionary. Who is a missionary? A missionary does not visualize events. He is very clear, this is my mission, I am going to live till I am lived, this is it. So there is a distinction between a person with a mission and a person who has got a vision. He goes towards actualization. So your values, to me values form the most important infrastructure of an organization.
As leaders, we have to walk the talk. And I just give a small example from Jesus' lifestyle, wherein he washes the feet of the disciples. And that is a very powerful example. Everywhere we are talking of service-oriented, customer-oriented service and different things. So he says, I do this so that you can also do this to others. He didn't tell them to do it. So again, what we are talking about is values. I mean, unless it's in you, it's spontaneously your own behavior. But we are not sort of telling you this is the behavior you must have. But should be in you. Unless you're honest, honesty comes out of you.
No? Are you willing to walk the talk?
Another example I have is of Mr. Vicky Oberoi. I had the opportunity of working there, and one of the hotels he was walking, the long lobby, the general manager of the hotel and the vice president HR were with him on either side. He's a short-statured gentleman. They were walking. In the distance, there was a small bit of water. So it's going to cross his path. So the general manager was signing to some lobby manager, get that cleaned up, right? So being taller, he was signing out and all that. The HR chief also was looking. So, but nobody was taking these cues. And they came close to that little puddle of water. So Mr. Oberoi took out his handkerchief, beautiful one, bent down, wiped it, put the handkerchief back, and continued walking.
No amount of communication, no amount of talking, no amount of saying is ever going to replace that. Ultimately, am I following the value? It is actions. It is the way in which people are able to see you in action. So the question as a leader is, are you going to also ensure that what you really believe in, not necessarily what you articulate. What I articulate can change because of the times. But what I truly believe in is being seen out there in actions. So the whole arena of mission, vision and goals get carried to various type of people in an inspirational mode, in a mode of enactment by activating whole lot of people. So what are your experiences? So we talked about communication, we talked about inspiration, inspiring, charismatic leadership. Then we also talked about walking the talk. Can you reflect on that?
When I was listening to Professor just now, I was thinking of a couple of things that I've seen my MD do. And one was, we have a very small office. The person at the reception is also the telephone operator. And there was a day that there were a few people sitting at the reception, and my MD I think he was on his way out of the door, and the receptionist wasn't there. The telephone suddenly started ringing, and he just picked it up and said Allegan. Or for instance, say when we have all our international travel and all that, our policies say that beyond so many hours you travel business class. He never travels business class. And when he doesn't travel business class, some of us, okay, once or twice you do it, and then you realize that when my boss is not traveling business class, it's not right for me to do it either. I mean, we are a small organization. Let's be simple. Do we need this? No, we don't.
Absolutely.
Can we save money? Certainly we can.
That's one of the reasons when you're selecting a person, if there is no value-based alignment, there is a big disconnect.
That's a very important thing, and that's what was my concern when establishing Volvo. We put a lot of focus as a HR team on the recruitment of the operators, and just in terms of statistics, scanning something more than about 8 to 10,000 resumes, and physically testing about 4,000-5,000 people, interviewing more than 1,000 people, and then selecting about 100 people. We had an issue once. We were not able to get good welders. And then the people whom we got as good welders did not have the right values. Then we sort of looked at it very differently. We said, now what is it? We want guys with right values. Okay, what are the things we can change, we cannot change? First we said we cannot change their physique. They have to be having good physique, so that is God given. So we look for people with good physique. Next is the values. We said they have good values, they can learn, they have something like honesty, they are willing to sort of learn, listen, fine. Then they said, then we noticed that these guys do not have welding skills. So that is when we recruited them nevertheless, spoke to the CMTI and gave them a crash course in welding. We said these skills can be acquired. But very often we look at the skill and then forget the other things which cannot be changed, which cannot be learned. So we changed it, and then we had people who were versatile, and that gave the situation having a versatile workforce as well. But we knew if we had taken some of the people who didn't have the right values, it would have been a different employee relations story.
You know, very strangely, the people of the Yor never talked about values. It was a part of their life. It was nothing to be talked about. Or that organizations, when they are in doubt, they refer to a set of basic sutras or principles. The organization started coming out with mission statements. So when in doubt, refer to the mission statement. When in doubt, refer to the vision statement. And some of them were laid out very great detail. Some of them are very cryptic. Like for instance, Laval. They said, we help farmers in milk production. They are manufacturers of milk producing equipments. Like you're talking about CNI, they say that we are people friendly, we are pocket friendly. So people came out with very simple one-liners and two-liners, but there is a whole lot of long statements to follow from there. And many of them made very elaborate statements. And how you communicate this down, how you generate it, what are the processes. And a leader's one of the major role is to be clear in all these things and keep on regenerating this, so that an organization becomes a cauldron where people keep alive not only the economic worth but also the various other imponderables which gives meaning to an organization. So when you look at a mission statement, it talks about what are we, who are we, why are we, and what is it that we are going to accomplish. So all these four statements are a part of a mission statement. Each organization strives hard to bring its mission statement in very different ways. What are the opportunities or needs that we exist to address? What are we doing to address these needs? And what principles or beliefs that guide our work? These are the three statements which forms the starting point of an organization.